presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Coming up next on Dialogue, 15 years and nearly 650 programs.
We'll take a look back at the last decade and a half of Idaho's only statewide public affairs program.
It's Dialogue on Dialogue, next. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin.
And I'm Joan Cartan Hansen.
You know, a lot can happen in just 15 years. Since Dialogue first went on the air in November 1994, we've gone from a Republican revolution in the U.S. House of Representatives to a democratically controlled Congress and the first African-American president.
Idaho's enjoyed both boom times and record growth, and now hard times and a slow recovery.
And of course, we watched with the rest of the world as our country was attacked on September 11th, 2001, and has been at war in Iraq and Afghanistan since then.
Those topics and many others have been the subject of nearly 650 Dialogue programs. Programs we hope that have informed, enlightened, and sometimes entertained.
That was our goal, to bring together knowledgeable and thoughtful people to discuss issues of the day and allow you, the viewers, to join the dialogue, so to speak, by calling in with your questions.
And now let's take a look back at some of those conversations.
Politics is a mainstay of any public affairs program, and indeed our first show in 1994 looked at the recent Republican sweep of Congress. Since then, we've hosted almost all of Idaho's major politicians, analyzed elections, and even discussed a scandal or two. People have said about you that because you never forget somebody, if somebody does you wrong or crosses you the wrong way, you don't forget them.
I have a memory for those people that my father taught me when I was small, but don't ever strike the first blow. But remember it when somebody else does, and yes, I do.
Did that veto, or that override of your veto last year, did that hurt in any way, that gentleman who says that he had a long-standing feud with you way back, and that was
well,
his way of getting
let's
back
just
at you?
say that state senator who caused that to happen no longer holds public office.
Where do you draw the line between allowing people to vent and telling and saying how they feel about the federal government and its restrictions, and some of the highly inflammatory rhetoric we're hearing? Do you not feel that perhaps some people with more violent tendencies have been emboldened by this whole anti-federal government spirit that's out now?
Well, I don't think violent speech is necessary at this time. I think that people are being pushed too far. And I think that the thing that really is the levelizer is the law. And when the federal government abides by the same law they want us to abide by, then this will be a nation where the peace and tranquility of the nation is guarded. Unfortunately, when the Fish and Wildlife Service and Bruce Babbitt himself specifically ordered to have wolves dropped in Idaho, it was against Idaho law.
One of the most telling events on me was when I went to the Army down in Biloxi, Mississippi, and took my basic training there, and I'd seen very few black people at that time, and I got off the bus and walked down the street and noticed that the black people had to get off in the gutter and let the white folks go by. There were separate entrances to the park, separate obituaries, separate telephone directories, and of course they'd shove them to the back of the bus before they'd move the bus. And that made quite an impression on me. I thought that certainly wasn't the proper thing to do.
I'm concerned that no weapons of mass destruction have yet been found in Iraq, and I wonder how hard they are still looking for them, and whether you were involved in seeing where our intelligence failed.
Question?
Very much so. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, the Armed Services, or maybe it's 2 days ago now, the Armed Services Committee in the Senate had our Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, before it, And he was asked these very same questions. And although we do not yet have most of the weapons of mass destruction identified and located, he said that it was his opinion from the information that he had that we would ultimately find them.
I think I've got to tell you, I'm very disappointed in the stimulus package in total, and disappointed that we even accepted it. And I'd like to know where Idaho, a great state, great conservative state, would be if we had not taken it at all.
The fact is that both Walt and I voted against the stimulus package. We didn't think it was the right thing to do. Spent too much money over too long a period of time. It should have gone through the regular appropriations process that it didn't, but that's all behind us. It's passed and it is now law. And should Idaho and the citizens of Idaho be able to benefit from that spending? If we don't, it goes someplace else.
Absolutely, Ada County bill did not win. That made the difference in the race. Those 5,000 votes were more than enough to make up the margin. And really, it's very simple. Barack Obama did not have electoral coattails in Idaho, but he raised and spent $650 million nationwide, and a bunch of money was dumped into Idaho for that race, and he outspent Bill Sally at least 3 to 1.
Well, first of all, let me say how delightful it is to be here listening to a Republican complain about having been outspent in an Idaho campaign. I didn't think I would live to see it, and I count myself fortunate to be here. It was a referendum on Bill Sally to a certain extent. Bill Sally had not accounted himself well in Washington, and most Idahoans knew it. But it is also a testament to Walt Minnick, his dedication, his devotion, his energy, his organization.
Therefore, it is with sadness and deep regret that I announce that it is my intent to resign from the Senate effective September 30th.
I mean, it really did sound like he was planning to walk out the door, but as we know, there was a phone call made to his attorney, which to the wrong number. What else could go wrong for this man?
It was amazing to hear the misdirected phone message afterwards, because I was there right in front of Senator Craig watching him say this, and I thought he said he was going to resign. The way that he speaks is quite formal, and emphasizing words and pausing is typical of the way he gives a speech, and it didn't seem to me that there was any unusual emphasis being placed on any particular word, but it turns out there was, because as he said in his misdirected voicemail message, he was getting the sense that maybe he wouldn't have to resign, and so he changed his speech and added the word intent to leave a door open, a way out.
Many people moved to Idaho because of the incredible scenery, outdoor activities, and resource-based economy. Perhaps it's because environmental issues are so close to people's hearts that they're among the most contentious topics in our state and the subjects of some of our most popular shows.
Even with the guided tour, there's still harassment of wildlife, just as the Bush administration said there would be in its plan. There are still air quality problems. That's not going to go away. There are still the noise. Yes, they're quieter, but when we stopped at Madison to take a break, there must have been 60 snow machines, a number of groups sitting there. They all left at the same time, pretty much. That's noisy, and you hear it all the time. So, sure, they're quieter, they're cleaner, but they're neither clean nor quiet.
I've heard that statement time and time and time again. They're cleaner and quieter, but not clean and quiet. Do you expect that Yellowstone be totally without any sound of motors? If so, then summer is equally, causes equal problem as does the winter.
I believe that the strategy of the animal rights group that's behind this initiative is to try to drive a wedge between the hunters and the non-hunting public. And the way they try to do it is they come in and try to stigmatize hunting. Fact is, the vice president of the organization that's financing and pushing the Proposition 2 said in a recent statement that we would like to stigmatize hunting. And using the initiative process, we'll go species by species, state by state, until we eliminate all hunting. That's pretty plain.
I would suggest that, as I said in the first place, I am a hunter, and if I thought there was any anti-hunting application to this, I would not be a part of it. there were 78,000 Idahoans who signed the initiative that got this on the ballot, and 76,000 of them, those signatures were collected exclusively by volunteers. So if you want to say that there are 78,000 Idahoans are anti-hunters, that's patently absurd.
We think that if we do move to a position to remove the dams, both the salmon and the economy will be the losers in this, because we frankly believe that there are very high economic costs throughout the state of Idaho and throughout the Pacific Northwest for dam removal. But in addition to that, we still don't have the independent science groups which can come forward and say that dam removal is that silver bullet solution that'll help the salmon.
Which science do we believe?
Well, clearly, my agenda here is to save fish. Bruce's agenda is to save dams. And I think it's important that the viewing audience understand that from the get-go. The Idaho Fish and Game model, the state model, and the tribal model says that it's a hydro system that are causing these problems. And until we fix that, no matter what else we do, these fish are doomed to extinction.
No question, we're experiencing climate change. And the loss of that sea ice has had a dramatic effect.
So, but you don't feel that individual projects in the polar bear habitat should be denied on the basis of the fact that they contribute to global warming?
No, for this reason. You cannot, through science, state that an activity in the lower 48 somehow is having a direct effect upon a specific bear up in Alaska. You cannot make that causal connection.
Carole King and others have called this a privatization bill, very concerned about the precedent set by transferring federal land to other entities like counties, and in some instances that land would be developed. What's your answer to them?
I absolutely share that same concern. That's a piece of the bill that we have never been supportive of. That said, I think it's important that we view the overall totality of the package and whether or not Idahoans can have a say here where you have a bottom-up solution. Idaho has always disliked top-down, DC-based solutions. This is a bottom-up, and bottom-up looks different than top-down.
Your 220 harvest limit is over the number of wolves that we're even supposed to have in the state, which was a little over 100, and now you're willing to bargain at 550, I heard you say, between 550 and 700, excuse me.
I mean, again, that points back to the confusion I think people have that somehow we were supposed to get to 150 wolves or 100 wolves and stop. And that was not the point of restoring wolves to the state. We were supposed to have a connected metapopulation of wolves here.
The thing with the tribes is we really don't have a choice. This is where the Creator put us. This is our homeland. So no matter what happens out there, we have to find some survivability in it. And I think we're really fortunate to be able to come together, and I commend everyone that played a part in there, especially Senator Crapo and Fred and some of the key players, Craig. You guys, it's been in it for a long time, and well, this is the first of its kind. This has never happened anywhere before.
From higher education to education high up in space, Dialogue has looked at the process and the politics of learning.
217 schools across Idaho failed to meet the No Child Left Behind standards in the first round of tests. In one case, a whole school failed because one student didn't participate. And requiring testing without exception, some educators argue, is unreasonable, especially for the subgroup of students the law was really trying to help. For example, in the Boise School District, a group of Somalian Bantu children arrived in the country speaking no English. They had to take the test.
So think about, then, sitting those students down in front of a computer. Many of them have very limited experience with technology, if they have any at all. And then having them take a test in English, and then having those test results count toward the school's proficiency, both in the total and as part of a subgroup. Well, having observed those students and seen them in action and knowing what kind of abilities they have, I would think that would be extremely frustrating, and I think it is unfair.
This committee's work is focused on an evaluation system, and it is not, teacher pay will not be tied to how a teacher performs on this evaluation.
You're still dealing with human beings,
and we still have personality issues, and you still, for the most part, only have one principal that would be observing you. And to say that a teacher's pay is going to be tied to their evaluation, when there's so much else that goes on during the year, that we just don't believe it's fair to educators.
Let's take a call from Roy in Boise. Roy, go ahead, please.
Yes, I was wondering how BYU Idaho is treating its gay, lesbian, and bigender and transgender students.
Okay. Are you LDS?
I was raised LDS and was pushed away by the religion because of my sexual orientation.
Thank you very much for your call. You mentioned that your experience at Harvard gave you empathy for students struggling. Answer this man's question about how the university views gays.
First of all, because the university is affiliated with the church, the standards of the church prevail in the university, and before someone comes, they have to be endorsed by their bishop. The endorsement means that they are living according to the tenets and standards of the church, and that they are worthy to come. So students who are gay, potential students who are gay and who are living that lifestyle would not be eligible to come to the university. If someone comes and has that kind of orientation and is struggling with it, we have outstanding counselors and people to work with them and help them understand what's going on in their lives. But the bottom line is we expect people to believe and adhere to the standards of the church. And if they don't, then they won't be part of the university.
There was a little bit of a dust-up when you came because of the salary question. The foundation had to kick money in and the state board had to change rules. Has there been any fallout from that?
I don't think so. Again, I think part of it was a statement of I feel like the salary is very fair, and if you look nationally among land-grant research universities, my salary is on the lower end of that, and that's fine. But I felt like there was a need to negotiate a salary that I felt was competitive.
In the broad scheme of knowledge, Aristotle wrote about this actually, in the clergy you can have recourse to faith, and nobody can really question a sincere profession of faith. In medicine or science, the replication of an observed event, that's a truth. But in law, the goal is a pursuit of justice, and it's never quite perfectly attained. It can be debated, and that I think also leaves room for disaffection, which can sometimes be translated into humor.
I was wondering if you felt like you had the opportunity to win a national championship while you're in Boise.
Good question. I don't think we're there yet in terms of, I think, the league that we play in, which I think is good. I don't think we're on enough of a national stage just yet. But as we continue to grow, our league will get better. I think when our league gets better, who knows how long we stay in this league. But I do believe this. I mean, if national championships can be won in Tallahassee, Florida, in Lincoln, Nebraska, those towns a lot like Boise, why can't we get that done here? It's just going to take time.
There you go. Brenner in Firth. Go ahead.
Coach?
Hello.
Congratulations on the win, and that was one of the best football games I've ever seen in college football, and I'd just like to say congrats. And I'm in 7th grade, and I go to school in Firth, and I plan on coming to Boise State to play, and either as a running back or a quarterback, and I was just wondering if you would be there to coach me.
Hey, boy, I sure hope so. I really do. That's awesome. We recruit the entire West, but I've been over at that high school in Firth a couple times. So you hang in there and keep working hard and keep working on those grades, most importantly. And we'll be back over there in a few years to take a good look at you.
As the launch nears, Barbara says she's not particularly excited or emotional. She's just focused on the work.
The feelings that are coming now are, oh my gosh, do we have enough time to finish up all the things that we need to do to be ready to fly? But to help calm myself down about that, I remember, well, that's the same way it is in teaching. All of a sudden you're, 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from the end of the school year, and you're going, oh no, we still have all of this stuff left to do.
We see our commander.
One person who understands is Colonel Eileen Collins. The first female shuttle commander and a veteran of 4 trips into space, Collins doesn't downplay the work that needs to be done on mission, but she has some advice.
You have got to look out the window. I've always told my crews, you have got to look out the window, because a year from now or 5 years from now, you're not going to be telling your grandchildren how you read the flight plan. Of course, despite the fact that that's the most important thing, is that you accomplish the mission safely. But you've got to be a human while you're up there too. When you come back from the mission, people want you to share your experience, so have it.
Here, Commander Eileen Collins.
I've told her many, many times it's worth the wait. To see your planet at a glance, to travel at 18,000 miles an hour, to see sunrises and sunsets every 45 minutes as you go around the Earth, there's just no other experience in life that can top it.
Another subject that affects all of us is healthcare. Over the years, Dialogue has examined both specific medical topics and healthcare policy.
We lie to our children, and now our children are able to get an awful lot of information. We think it's all right for the TV to teach them. It's all right for the streets to teach them. It's all right for the girly magazines to teach them. But we don't want the teacher teaching them anything. And of course, we're going to have to change from that.
Incest is common. I didn't know that before we did this work. Rape is common. I didn't know that before we did this work. What's uncommon is speaking about them in an open manner. A very, very important thing. I mean, the issues of secrecy that are necessary to keep all of this suppressed and out of anyone's awareness are truly extraordinary.
I've lectured around the country and people go, wait a minute, you know, my grandmother lived to be 100, I'm going to live to be 100, or my grandpa died, or my father died at 50, I'm going to die at 50. And it turns out genes are the minor player. In fact, when you look at the data, genes probably are accountable only for about 50% of your longevity or less. Clearly, environment is the chief role. And I'll show you what that is, for instance, in cancer. If you have identical twins, same genetic code, if one twin gets breast cancer, there's only a 25% chance the other twin will get breast cancer. Therefore, 75% has to be environmental.
In terms of the autoimmune and inflammatory arthritis, there's very little evidence that diet really influences those, with the one exception being vitamin D levels. Having low vitamin D has been shown to put people at increased risk for systemic lupus, multiple sclerosis, and other autoimmune diseases, and also is associated with osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, and lots of other healthcare problems.
You're very afraid, you're in shock, your life's been turned upside down, but it's important to talk to other women who've been through it, talk to medical facilities, get the names of really good oncologists, and talk to several of them and say, you know, this is my diagnosis, what do you recommend, and see who you have a really good rapport with. Because it's extremely important to feel comfortable with the doctor and know that the decisions that are being made are really your decisions and the decisions in your best interest.
It is a crime in this country that the single leading cause of bankruptcy in our nation is from personal health care expenses. So you or I today could have an accident, could have something happen that could potentially bankrupt us. That can't happen in this country if we truly care for our people. So one of the big things is not only the front-end reforms to health care, i.e. keeping people healthy and well, but also the back-end catastrophic coverage, so that if something happens, you don't go bankrupt and your family loses everything that they would have had if that hadn't have happened.
I see people at the best times of their life because they know what truly is important, which is their loved ones, the sunrise, the sunset, a cup of coffee, an old Cary Grant movie, and they remind me of that every day, and that's not depressing.
Some topics don't fall easily into a category. They're what we call social issues. Often controversial, these subjects also allow us to see how society is changing.
Questioning policies, questioning the government, those kinds of things, that's the American right. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. But when I'm talking about waging war against the United States of America today, I'm opposed to that. I don't support it, and I don't support any group that even espouses that. So am I, Vaughn. Well, I tell you something, you better rewrite your book, Sam. Well, find it in there that I espouse waging war. You've got it all marked there. Some of the things. Show me there. I mean, when you sheriffs had your meeting up there and you voted on whether you would support our idea or not, did you have a representative from any militia unit up there? We had your book. No. Did you have a representative up there? We had your Bible. No, that isn't our Bible. That's a question and answer book that's out of date. Everything about the militia, and right here, I can go through if you'd like and read the various things that we read that tends to upset us. It says right here, how can the militia do what the police cannot? It says the militia would have the appropriate arms and training similar to that of the military. Now, you just said a moment ago you wouldn't, but it says right here you would. Yes, okay, we would. you talk about here. And so you believe that the other state defense forces as held by the state of New Mexico, California, Oregon, New York, etc., are inappropriate and should be disbanded? I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about my state of Idaho.
Do you believe that kids as early as elementary school should be taught that homosexuality is normal?
Yes, because it's just as normal as heterosexuality. In my opinion, in my family's opinion, what my family says to be their values and their opinions, it is okay.
Well, what about my values? How would you feel if you were a parent and your child was taught that homosexuality is perversion and you disagreed with that? You'd be highly upset, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's
so
why
we're highly upset that only one side of this issue would be taught in your estimation.
It's Elementary is not about one side of the issue. It shows in that film in several different places where a teacher is disagreeing with whether or not homosexuality should be taught. She's saying it's against my religion. It's against what I believe.
When politicians run for office, they say we need the death penalty in Idaho. We need it in Mississippi. We need it. Why? Because we're going to show we're really tough on crime. And if you're not really tough on crime, if you're soft on crime, then you're against the death penalty. They attack their opponents if anybody dares to say they're against the death penalty. And it's a farce because it has nothing to do with deterrence, and it's a very, very selective process. It all depends on who got killed and who cares. So when, in quotes, the nobodies of society are killed, when homeless people are killed, or poor people are killed, often when people of color are killed, you think there's a big drive and impetus to go for the death penalty?
There's a Basque community here that's been here since Idaho was a state. Nobody printed anything in their language. They've prospered. We have the Norwegians in the north. We have the Italians. All of these people, you didn't print in Portuguese. You didn't print in Italian.
Mr. Rankin suffers from what many suffer who promote these kinds of policies or legislations or resolutions. That's from historical amnesia. As a matter of fact, we are a nation of immigrants. As a matter of fact, this issue has always been a contentious issue. It has not been a uniting issue. It has been a dividing issue.
A lot of concern about undocumented Mexican Americans in this country. Misconception? Appropriate concern? What's your thought?
Well, we acknowledge that there is a lot of people from Mexico living with no documents in the U.S. But we acknowledge also that there is people that is been working here for a number of years. I mean, there is people that is been living in the U.S. for the last 20 years with no opportunity to normalize their migratory situation.
Michael was brought up Mormon, but when he was about 15, he decided to explore other religions.
I was looking for something that had more to do with what I believed in my heart rather than trying to find a religion that kind of, that I could conform to.
One day in his junior high school library, he found this book from the 1950s on world religions. In it was a chapter on Islam.
When I read it, it kind of captured me because it was completely different than what I had previously thought about it. I thought that it was just a terrorist religion, and they hated women, blah, 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 all the typical stereotypes. When I actually started to read, like parts of the Quran, it really touched me, like closer than anything else had ever touched me before.
So Michael decided to convert. Without ever having met another Muslim, he learned the daily Arabic prayers, read the Quran, abstained from pork, and tried to fast during Ramadan, all in secret.
I basically pretended to be something that I wasn't. I kind of lied, told everyone that I was Mormon, but in secret I was practicing Islam on my own.
Civil rights legislation, historically and correctly, has been reserved for immutable characteristics. Someone who is born African American will be African American until the day they die. There's no proof that homosexuals are born that way. Even gay researchers who are motivated to find a gay gene have not been able to identify a gay gene yet.
I don't know what causes being gay. That is, you're absolutely right. That has been debated, and there are many theories out there, and I wouldn't try to hazard a guess. I know that for 20 plus years I tried not to be. I went through ex-gay therapy. I don't think someone can change their orientation. Now, there'll be people who will disagree with me on that. I could change my behavior. I could say I'm going to live alone and not in a relationship and not be in commitment and not have any intimacy in my life. But what kind of horrible existence is that to say to someone, we don't want you to have love and intimacy and wholeness in your life and in your relationship?
After reviewing the 276-page report produced by Gibran's team, the military nominated 7 African-American World War II veterans for a Congressional Medal of Honor. When Baker received the call saying he was to receive a Congressional Medal of Honor, at first he was astonished. Then he was angry.
Because it was something that I felt it should have been done a long time ago. If I was worthy of receiving the Medal of Honor in 1945, I should have received it then.
But he says the pain of discrimination, of being forgotten for so long, melted after dozens of strangers, white and black, wrote to congratulate him and to apologize.
After reading of your bravery and heroism under fire, I felt compelled to write to you. First, my own personal thank you for your heroism for our country. Second, I'm sorry it has taken so long for you to receive the highest award our nation has for being a true hero, the Medal of Honor.
What do you think of all these people who have written you?
I love them.
Experts come in all ages, and over the years, we've found that young people can speak clearly and often poignantly about important issues.
Really, as soon as I heard about what happened in New Orleans, I just really felt I needed help. I mean, these people have lost all their belongings, some family members. I just can't even imagine what these people have gone through, and actually being down there and helping them, it was a great experience because I went down there wanting to make a better beginning for them, and really I think they made a better beginning for me.
I have problems with gay rights and abortion. I also have problems with the Patriot Act, and me as I am going to vote for Kerry because I personally do not like Bush at all. And I see Kerry as a better candidate for running this country.
I actually am liberal when it comes to gay marriage. I believe that everybody should have the right to marry who they want to. And I really don't like Bush either, but I'm going to have to vote for him because Kerry is very strong on gun control, and I'm very anti-gun control. So I will be forced to vote for Bush this election, even though I think Kerry might be a better leader.
I am a very conservative person. I grew up in a religious family, so that's shaped a lot of the values that I feel. And I've always liked the way Bush has handled things. Granted, he's messed up on areas. For example, Iraq, the occupation hasn't gone as well as it should have. But I'm not going to vote against him just because the occupation hasn't gone as well.
I remember when I was taken into care, I cried for my mother, and I was thinking about that, and I thought about how foolish that was because she had been the one who was abusing me at the time. If there was anyone to cry for, it shouldn't have been her. But when I look back on the situation now and I look at this example with Matthew, I see that foster kids don't have anyone else to cry for. That's why a lot of times when they're taken out of their home or something bad happens, they'll still cry for their parents, and they'll always want to go back to their parents, and they'll always feel like they're doing something wrong.
They feel responsible for the situation.
Yeah, very true.
I can't begin to describe the impact that drug court has had on my life. It's given me whole new opportunities. A year ago, I had absolutely no chance of being where I'm at today. You know, I'm getting ready to go to school. I've got a beautiful girlfriend. She's pregnant with my child. I've got my family that's back in my life. And, you know, it really makes me want to cry when I stop and think about it, because I have a second chance at life now, where before I was headed to prison and I wasn't going to have any kind of life or anything that my mom could be proud of. And now when my mom says, "I'm proud of you," it means something to me.
While most of our focus has been on Idaho issues, we're certainly not immune from what's happening around the world, and so global concerns have also been on our docket.
Iraq in 2003 had no weapons of mass destruction. They were on their knees, and the US should have known it. In the case of Iran, you have a big nuclear establishment with research laboratories, and you have these cascades for enrichment. And they have a strong military, of course. But the situation is risky. You ask whether the world is more dangerous, and the situation is risky if a spark flies in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf. Well, then we may go to something bad. And if they use military means against Iran, well, a country that now may be very divided on the nuclear issue, I'm sure will unite in nationalism. They say, well, this proves that indeed we might need the weapons that we did not think we wanted before.
Marsha, on your second day there, you saw this amazing outburst of people's support for the Iranian Nobel Prize winner. Could you tell me about that?
There were thousands of people there, and they were very open in their love and support for her, and airport officials and police let them, get so close to the terminal, which I thought was interesting. Which wouldn't happen here? No, I don't think that would happen in the United States. It was very peaceful. People were chanting slogans about "Let our political prisoners free," that would be the real test of freedom. It was a very warm, amazing experience to be there. I'll never forget it. Seeing everybody so open and happy. This has been a long-standing suspicion that Osama bin Laden is somewhere in the Pakistani tribal territories.
Very few people believe otherwise, and of course he has not been easy to find. Part of the problem is there was a feeling that Pakistan under General Musharraf was simultaneously encouraging, nurturing and shielding the very extremists against whom they said they were the sole bulwark. So they were saying, you better support us and give us money. Pakistan got $11 billion in American aid and lots of debts written off as well. Support us, finance us, because otherwise it's going to be Islamist fundamentalism. But who's financing the Islamist fundamentalism? And very, very often it appeared to be agencies of the Pakistani government. And this is a great problem. This double game has gone on long enough, but how the world can stop it, no one knows.
I want to know if it was scary over there in Iraq.
If it was scary? Yeah. Okay, and how old are you, Matt?
I'm 11 years old.
Thank you so much for calling. Was it scary?
It was scary sometimes, but it's scary here sometimes too. So.
You guys were saying coming on TV felt scary too. What about the rest of you? What did you do when you were scared? I assume all of you were scared at points.
There are so many times where it just never leaves your mind. As you're sitting there, maybe emailing your wife or something like that, you never know if a mortar is going to drop in your compound or if a sniper is going to take a shot at you. So it's just constant underlying little touch of fear at all times, for me at least.
It's just, I can't really, there's a few times when I remember being scared, but you just kind of always think about those Marines around you and remember that, you have a job to do and they have a job to do and you're relying on each other.
And you were telling me that just looking through some of these photographs preparing for the show, you miss being over there.
I do. My wife was listening, but obviously I love being home with my family, but we made some great friendships over there and great progress, and it's really hard to just turn your back on that. In some respects, we would certainly like to continue that mission till the end.
I went into this war with a very ambivalent support for it, which was not public, it was my own feeling, and have felt somehow personally involved and somewhat responsible for that reason, and had high hopes. I mean, a lot of people did. A lot of Iraqis did. A lot of Americans did. To see those hopes disintegrate is pretty shattering. So, yeah, this is on a scale that I haven't experienced in my life. It's historic and big, and it'll certainly be with me forever.
I feel bad that my children have to worry about me, but they also know that what I do is important to me and that I hope is important to the country. And I don't want to make that bigger than it sounds, but it's important to me that people understand what's happening over there, to understand, because we as a country have not sacrificed. We just have not sacrificed in this war. The soldiers and Marines and others fighting over there and the civilians have sacrificed, and their families have sacrificed. We as a country were never asked to do anything.
For years, Idaho seemed protected from economic downturns, but now the state is grappling with budget shortfalls, job losses, and business closures. The economy has always been an important topic for Dialogue, and we've been producing even more shows on it lately.
I think a good image is bankers gone wild. I mean, we've had practices over the past decade that no rational person could say is reasonable. I mean, we've had a complete breakdown in regulatory oversight of the financial services sector. But even in 2007 and into 2008, we were being assured that it wasn't going to drag the overall economy down. Now, people who are charged with the responsibility of looking into the inner workings of banks simply let us down.
Colleen says, as one of the state employees that has money in Percy, I'm concerned about how our money is not only invested, but what guarantee is there that we will not lose money and have no retirement for our future? What measures is Percy taking to ensure our financial security? Mark says, what is your exposure to the subprime and non-performing mortgages? State employees worried about their retirement?
Well, we have no exposure to the subprime or mortgages. The standards we have for investment don't do this. We're built for this type of environment occurring once every 5 to 10 years. In fact, we're built for things that are much worse than this. I mean, if you look back, this type of activity occurs in markets once every 6 or 7 years. And every time I think I'm going to, the one thing I like to see happen is the phrase, since the Great Depression, struck out of economic, because we had it during the worst equity market since the Great Depression only 6 years ago. Before that, it was the Asian crisis. Before that, the savings and loan. And then 1987. I mean, the Percy Fund was started 45 years ago. It'll be around till the state of Idaho, as long as the state of Idaho is.
Had the regulators done their job, we wouldn't have this systemic risk that has really punished every taxpayer in America. So I think that we just need people in these posts that have a fervor for their jobs.
Well, do we?
And unfortunately, some of the people that we have in these top levels of government were really kind of on the scene when, this crime was unfolding.
Over the years, Joan and I have been privileged to talk to many inspiring people who have grabbed life by the reins, and in doing so have illuminated the human experience for us all.
Well, I think I've always been kind of a jack of all trades in music. I've always really enjoyed a lot of different musical forms of expression. I mean, I'm probably one of the few serious symphonic conductors in the United States who played in a rock band and has played some jazz. I've backed an Elvis impersonator. Yes, now it can be admitted to. Those things, I think, are not contradictory. I don't think that doing one cheapens your ability to do the other. I think that, the real hallmark of a good musician is someone who's very versatile and comfortable in a lot of different languages.
And as far as the jazz musicians of today and that the new bumper crop, as you say, I don't listen to them because I don't listen to anyone. It's very important for me as a jazz artist to keep my ears closed and try to come from inside of Gene Harris. I try to play from my heart and not what I hear on record. We automatically retain what we hear, and so therefore I try not to listen.
In terms of preserving Roy's original videotape of his grandmother, he can't. So all I can do is duplicate it.
So, well, then let me ask that question. As technology, changes every time you sneeze, you've got, now it's on VHS, you make it to DVD. What do you do when the technology that whatever your precious thing is formatted on, you just have to keep up with the...
You have to keep up with it, and one thing that people forget is it's sort of like the, what were they called, 8-track tapes? You can't play them anymore because there's nothing to play them on.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, you have to be using the technology that you can actually utilize what you're saving.
I never make movies that have bad guys in them, and I don't know why that is. It seems odd, because most movies do have an antagonist.
Maybe the quote, I've heard you say that philosophically you found that fear dominates our lives in more ways than we care to admit. So maybe the bad guy is
well, see, I think the bad guy is internal.
Is internal.
Right. And I guess that is a theme that really is close to me, and I'm really does intrigue me. But it would be interesting to make a movie at some point where you externalize that fear and
into a person.
Yeah, and destroy it.
The Bishop Kelly High School History Club had another
They're
question
back
for
again.
you. They're back again. Of all of the events you've covered and written about, what was the most unbelievable thing that you've seen?
Well, I was there the day the first Buddhist monk set himself on fire, and that was quite extraordinary, and that was jarring. I saw things in Vietnam of, helicopters. I was there the day after 3 helicopters were shot down in an early battle in January 1963, I think, covering the early civil rights days, the sit-ins. That was astonishing. I mean, I just think it's been a rich, long life. I mean, if you stick around a long time, I suppose, watching, like the rest of you, what happened on September 11th.
Would you have wanted to be covering that as a daily
Not particularly,
journalist?
no. I'm writing about it, but I didn't want to cover it. I think they're nice young kids out there. Younger reporters will do it better than I can, who'll stay up later and have more energy and more hunger to do it. I'm writing about the consequences of it, which is a different thing, and suits someone of my geriatric definition better.
Where were you on September 11th?
I was in London. I was in a restaurant in London. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this young woman says to another, I heard a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. And my wife had gone to the ladies' room, and I said, can't they ever talk about anything but science fiction? And then there was something in the air. There was something about the way she was talking. And they turned on the radio, which was insufficient, so we went across the street to a pub. And it's a strange thing to go into a London pub where people are standing up like penguins looking at the television and no drink has been served. And a man comes in, he's going to play with one of those electronic games, and people say, please don't do that. And we walked from where we were back to about 1.5 miles to the hotel, and we stopped at various pubs along the way. No drink was being served. The streets were empty. Traffic had stopped. And it was a strange thing to walk back. And even more than that, the yearning that I had to be in New York.
To be back.
It was like being with your lover. I wanted to be back.
Now, they thought that they were going to find the Welsh Indians. This has been a persistent myth in American frontier history, that there is a tribe of Welsh. There was supposed to be a lost tribe of Israel out there somewhere in the Great Plains. They thought that they were going to find a mountain of pure salt. They thought they were going to find that the Rocky Mountains were similar to the Appalachians. That is, a one-day portage would put you over the top of the Rockies and get you going downstream on the Columbia. They thought that they might find dinosaurs. They were almost certain they were going to find mastodons. So there was, it was all imaginative. And almost nothing that they found corresponded with what they expected to find. So everything had to be discovered. Every time they went around a bend in the river, there was something new to gape at.
Your book, Team of Rivals, is named because he picked for his cabinet people who had been his rivals, 3 of them in the Republican nomination for president.
It was an unprecedented act at the time because most presidents at that time chose people who believed like they did, who supported their positions.
And now.
And now, exactly. I mean, here were guys who not only had been his rivals for the Republican nomination, but they had been former Whigs, former Democrats, former nativists, abolitionists. They were conservative, they were liberal, they were radical even. And by putting them all in his cabinet, it meant that he had to argue with them every day. Sometimes the sessions were incredibly boisterous, but it meant he sharpened his thinking in a way that cabinet members today, when they're just sort of repeating what the president wants them to say, nothing new is happening. Nothing is helping the president become a better leader. He understood that. Somebody said to him, how can you put these people there? They're better known than you. They have more education. They are much more experienced. He said, they're the strongest men in the country. The country's in peril. I need them by my side. And he was so right. And he ended up mastering them all.
When Reagan began to deal with a new Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, they were saying, don't get taken in, Ronnie. Gorbachev as a new Stalin or a new Brezhnev with a smiling face and a better tailor. Don't deal seriously with him. And Reagan met with Gorbachev at Geneva and then again in Iceland, and he thought Gorbachev was for real, and he thought that they could end the Cold War together, and he negotiated seriously. And as a result, many of his oldest patrons said, what's happened to Ronnie. Some of them called him a useful idiot. I mean, others said that this was a weak man with a strong wife, Nancy, who must be manipulating him. But in the end, Reagan did end the Cold War. And the lesson of that, I think, is, we so often hear about politicians catering to their political base, and they oftentimes have to, but in the end, the real test of a leader is to recognize that you're not the captive of your political base. In the end, you have to be its leader.
I've held Ronald Reagan's farewell letter to the American people in my hand. I've seen the blots and I've seen the wavy margin as he wrote that last inexpressibly poignant document. And the feelings that any honest biographer can have when he holds a document like that in his hands cannot be duplicated and cannot be stimulated in future, in my opinion, by things like email and fax transcripts.
When network news first began, with NBC and CBS particularly, with ABC as a sort of poor cousin, the idea of those journalists was, we're going to make television journalism as serious and to have the values of the best newspapers, the best print in the country, in the wire services. And for about 20 years, I think that held. And now, the networks' news departments are no longer owned or run by the people who founded them. They're owned by big corporations in which news no longer has the value of a sort of prestigious lost leader, but is expected to be, the news department is expected to be a profit center as well. And the people who run those big companies like Viacom and GE don't give a damn about the value relative to the people who used to run them in the past, about the quality of the news on it. What they want is a ratings performance. And that is a very different world from the one that in which these programs were founded.
The moment one individual or group's theology ends up being imposed as the American theology, we've lost Americanism. We've lost the essence of liberty and justice for all upon which the nation was founded. We have betrayed the Declaration of Independence in a frightening way.
It's interesting coming from a theologian, a minister. Saying
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm speaking just as a present-day Unitarian Universalist, speaking in favor of the old-time Baptist belief that separation of church and state would protect all in this country and allow God did not need a seat in government, according to the Baptists. God would do perfectly fine without any congressman waving the flag and saying, I am giving God power. God will give power to the individuals, to the groups, indeed to the nation, but not through one political party or the other. That's what the ancient Baptists said, and I say amen to that.
You've been characterized as a Mormon feminist.
Yes.
Is that a fair characterization? And if so, what does it mean?
Well, I think a Mormon feminist is a person who adheres to the central tenets of the Latter-day Saint faith. I'm an active member of the LDS Church, a very committed member. But there have been lots of Mormon feminists. We just didn't know about them as young women growing up. Some of the first women in the United States to vote were Latter-day Saint women.
Having led a rather uneventful life, I mean, domestically there have been events, but I was too young for one war and too old for the next, and so my experience has been basically of the everyday, uncatastrophic world. And I've tried to find my material there, and I think since most people either do live lives like that or aspire to lead quiet lives, it's not a trivial area to explore.
One of the things that the novel has done over the last 300 years is it's constantly brought up issues, moral issues. It's constantly brought up issues of sexuality and cruelty and interpersonal cruelty and violence and sort of the freedom of the inner life. And it's explored these issues. And as a result, it's brought them to public consciousness.
I tend to be a joker personally and a bit of a rioter and make a lot of noise and tell jokes. But I'm a grim person within myself, and I always end up chronicling man's hysteria against other men and women. And yet when you're a writer, and the same thing happens to journalists, you think you're going to get in, get the story, and get out unscathed. And it never happens.
You had the feeling as that day wore on, 9/11 wore on, that this was why we had been working all of our careers, that these were career-defining events that we would now, everything I knew about how to make a film, what I knew about Washington, I'd spent a tremendous amount of time behind the scenes in other administrations, so I sort of knew how the federal government worked and how the White House works. All of us decided that from our own perspectives, we were going to dedicate our careers largely to this. None of us had any idea. I certainly didn't have any idea that I was making a mini-series of 10 films. I thought I was making one at a time, and I was just kind of following them along.
10 out of, I think, almost 40?
Out of 40, yes.
Do you get tired of revisiting the same issue over and over again?
Every time I finish a film, I say, well, that's the last one we'll do about Iraq, and my whole staff reaches into their pockets and pulls out $1 and sets it on the table and says, you want a badge?
You know how things are in a television studio. At the end of the program, when we have an honor roll, things go absolutely silent. Nobody moves. If there was a guest there in a prior segment, they remain seated. It's just part of our thing. And my feeling about it, and I feel this very strongly, that no matter what anybody thinks about war or this particular war in Iraq or the actions in Afghanistan, these folks are dying in our name, and that the least they are entitled to is 5 seconds at the end of the news hour on PBS.
You're guided by the question, what do you want to do with your one beautiful life?
You know, that's a line, Marcia, from a beautiful poem by Mary Oliver. And I think so often we project our lives to eternity, you know. I don't. To me, this is all there is, and that's more than enough. So what do we want to do with our one beautiful life? How do we engage? How do we live a life of conscience and consequence, which I think ultimately creates a consciousness, which is, I believe, what we're in need of in this country.
How do you pick a story to do?
Stories pick me. They just come, and you just go, my goodness, I have to do this. And I end up working too hard because I can't say no to a good story. And I've essentially made the same story. That's all. I mean, it's really, I'm curious about the inner workings of our country. What makes us tick? Who are we?
Who are we? You really can't say it any better than that. Now, while the story is still at the heart of what we do, how we share that story has changed a bit.
Dialogue has now entered the social media era. That means you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And Marcia and I both keep a blog on the Dialogue website where we talk more about that week's story.
These sites allow you to learn more about our topics and watch our programs on demand. But they also let us continue the conversation with you. We hope you'll check out our website and our Facebook page. Let us know how we're doing and what you'd like us to be covering.
One thing that hasn't changed is the great support we receive from our longtime funder, the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, and from public television viewers like you.
And we have a great staff who you don't see, but who make all of this happen. Watch the credits for their names and check out our web extra for a behind-the-scenes video and a conversation Joan and I had with executive producer Bruce Reichert about what goes into making Dialogue.
You'll find it all, including this program, on the Dialogue website at idahoptv.org.
Thanks for tuning in to Dialogue.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. To order a copy of this program from Idaho Public Television, call our toll-free number or visit us on the World Wide Web.